Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Uninvited guest or lover? Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy it! I can't help my feelings. I snapped as steam poured out of my ears. My friend Shelley simply grinned as she wiped down a few glasses before attending to the bar like the true bartender she was. We were at Shelley's bar, the gym, named after her late husband. His trick was that customers could honestly say that they had been to gyms or were going to gyms. It was a small corner place that Shelley and Jim had bought and fought to keep solvent. These hours of work drove Shelley's husband to his grave. She used her life insurance money to pay off most of her loans and turned her grief into preserving the bar in memory of her late husband. "Okay, Barb," Shelley said, refilling my glass with wine. "Let me see if I got this right. You're not mad because your husband, Dean, slept with someone else. Are you mad about who this girl is?" I took a sip from my glass before answering. "Are you blaming me, Shelley? Have you seen her?" Her name was Marge. Fat, chain-smoking, loud-mouthed, and red-haired. Marge worked as a middle manager for some useless government agency whose job was to write documents for another useless government agency. Shelley placed a few more glasses on the bar counter. "You understand, Barb, that this meeting between Marge and Dean happened long before you and Dean met." I looked around the bar. It was pretty empty except for a few guys playing pool in the back room. "Who cares, Shelley? I'm serious. Look at me." I stood up from the bar stool and twirled around, showing off my 4 times a week yoga body before sitting down. "And compare this body to hers," I said, grimacing as a mental image of Marge flashed through my head. "It's just not normal." Shelley threw the towel over her shoulder. "Well, your hubby Dean made a deal by marrying you. I don't understand why this bothers you. What if it wasn't him who ended the relationship? I found out that Marge and Dean had been together for over a year. What if it was Marge who broke up with Dean? This means that I agreed to a man who is not even good for Marge. This makes me sick. Barb, again, what a difference one man's trash is another man's treasure. Marge's loss is your gain. Easy for you to say, Shelley. You don't have to have sex with a man who's been sticking his pickle in a barrel of Marge's pickle for over a year." Shelley leaned against the counter with a smirk on her face. Maybe Marge had a few tricks up her sleeve in the bedroom that kept Dean coming back. Maybe you girls should get together and exchange recipes. I almost choked on my wine. I want you to know that no one who has been in my kitchen has ever left anything other than completely satisfied and, of course, always hungry for more. Shelley just raised her eyebrows. I looked around before speaking. I may not be some Vestal virgin, but I'm not some dirty urchin from the slums either. Shelley laughed and patted me on the shoulder. Sex is only dirty if it's done right. I knew my face was bright red when I answered, "Shelley, please, this is serious. I'm not happy about this." Shelley shook her head. "Sex is what takes the least time and causes the most trouble." I ignored her comment, running my finger along the rim of my glass. It just seems so hard to see a future with Dean when his past with that Marge is in his history. Shelley shook her head, looking at me. "Barb, have you ever heard this expression, 'The past is behind you, learn from it'? The future is ahead, prepare for it. The present is here, live it." Then, a dark expression appeared on her face. "Don't you like Tom the cat?" "I love this big black cat. He's the biggest damn cat I've ever seen, like a mini panther, and yet this crazy cat Tom has the character of a dog. Wonderful." I spat. Dean and Tom have always been together. Maybe Tom the cat can teach Dean how to get a real job. In the 5 years we've been married, Dean hasn't had a steady job. He never put his business education into practice. Shelley looked at me strangely. "You're kidding, right? People from other countries send their wooden antiques to Dean for restoration." "Ah, sure, but it's awkward at our office parties when Dean says he's whittling wood. I hate the impression that he looks like some country lumberjack. He could be halfway to senior management by now if he wanted to, but no, Dean wants to stay home and play with instruments in the garage." "Barb, I saw Dean's garage. This is a workshop better equipped than most woodworking shops." "This is my garage," I snapped, part of my grandfather's house, which he left me when my parents died. Didn't Dean completely redo all the wood floors in the house? Yes, but plus all the moldings and entrances. Yes, but what about the front porch steps and trim? Of course, but not to mention the fireplace, Shelley said, reaching under the counter and pulling out a magazine, plopping a glossy 2-page spread in front of me. Barb, isn't that you on the curved staircase Dean built from scratch in National Home magazine? Okay, Shelley, but I was the one who had to put up with all that dust. Oh, and now your house is listed on the county historic register. If Dean had accepted any of the offers he had outside of school, we could have made a lot of money and paid someone to do that kind of work. You don't know what it's like to have only one regular income, mine. This is not a situation that makes me too happy. Shelley rolled her eyes. I think Groucho Marx once said, "What good is happiness if it cannot be bought with money?" I took another sip of my wine. Seriously, Shelley, Dean being rejected by Marge along with his limited income is not exactly the key to my happiness. What key do you think, if you made enough money, you could have the key to happiness? Shelley shook her head. Seriously, Barb, my God, did your mother have smart children? Do you know how antique restoration works for cash? Do you have any payments on that new Lexus you bought last year? Well, no, I stammered. Dean paid in full for the car immediately after I chose it. Shelley put the magazine down. Having a lot of money doesn't mean you're special. In most cases, this means you're lucky. As I swirled the wine in my glass, I couldn't help but say, "It's easy for you to say." The last time I saw Dean in a suit was at my mom's funeral. Damn guy lives in faded jeans. Shelley stretched, placing the glasses on the top shelf. People in jeans built this country. It's the idiots in suits who are ruining it. Just then, Dean sat down next to me. So, what are my two stunning girls talking about? Shelley turned to Dean. Tell me, boy, how much money did your little lumber store make last year? A look of surprise flashed across Dean's face. You mean the income statement? He laughed. A gentleman never talks about money or his ladies. Shelley turned to me, but then turned to Dean. We were just talking about your wife's new Lexus. How about you? Have you already replaced that old pickup truck of yours? Dean looked at Shelley in surprise. For what? He may be 15 years old, but other than a little rust, he runs great. I tried to change the subject. Speaking of the ladies, you were with Marge. Now she heads the homeowners association next door. That's nice, Dean said absently, picking up the menu. Shelley, is my order ready? Just at that moment, one of the guys playing pool showed an empty beer bottle and raised 5 fingers. Shelley walked away to fill the order, leaving Dean and me alone. Dean, did you hear what I said? Dean turned the menu page. Of course, Barb. You said that Marge now heads the homeowners association. This shouldn't bother us, the house is in excellent condition. You do not care? Dean put the menu down and looked at me questioningly. What? I don't care if the house is in excellent condition. No, fool, I said, slapping down the menu. I'm talking about Marge. Dean looked truly embarrassed now. What about Marge? God, you men are so stupid, I sighed. You and her, me and her, what? Dean asked. You've met before. I used my fingers to put quotation marks around the word met. Dean shook his head. Yeah, Marge and I were dating before I met you. So what? Before me, you dated the quarterback, Mr. All-American High School? That reminds me, could you call him tomorrow and check on our car insurance? I want to increase the reach of your Lexus. There's a difference, Dean. Mr. All-American High School, as you called him, now sells us insurance, is married, has 2 children. And a picket fence that you helped him put up, I said, a smile appearing on Dean's face. Oh, I see. You want 2 children. This is wonderful, Barb. You know I pestered you to start having children. Don't worry about your work, I have orders for 2 years in advance. You can always go back to work after, Barb. Dean was talking to my back as I stomped out of my bar stool and walked out of the bar. The house was cool for the next few days. Confused. Dean gave me space and stayed in his stupid workshop, working on yet another of his stupid projects. Shelley told me I was being stupid. Even going so far as to say, too many women are looking for the right person instead of trying to be with the right person, but I couldn't do anything about how I felt. I mean, honestly, who wants other people's leftovers? That's why I sat at Marge's house, to see if I could find out the real story. "Are you sure you don't want a beer?" asked Marge, plopping her pantsuit clad butt into a chair with a cigarette in one hand and a can of store-brand beer in the other. No thanks, Marge," I replied, sitting on the edge of her couch and trying not to touch anything. Looking around Marge's house, I couldn't believe that she was in charge of everything that required taste. Her decor was inspired by an early 60s trailer park, with lion and leopard prints on every wall, rug, and painting. "Do as you please," Marge shrugged, opening the beer she was holding in her hand. The little dog jumped into her lap. She petted the animal, making kissing sounds. "I'm telling you, Barb, if there aren't any dogs in heaven, then when I die, I want to go where there are some," Marge continued, talking to the dog before turning to me. "Some people talk to animals, but few people listen to them. That's the problem." I tried not to vomit, and the smoke made my eyes water. "Marge, I'm surprised you're still smoking. You know you work for the government with all its anti-tobacco regulations." Marge blew a stream of smoke into the air. "It has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that smoking is the leading cause of the statistics." I tried to join her in a light laugh before moving on to general homeowner questions. Deciding to get to the bottom of the real reason for my visit, later in the conversation, however, Marge beat me to it. "Does Dean still have that big old black-ass cat, Tom?" I winced before answering, "Yes, Marge, Tom the cat still belongs to Dean." Marge took a sip of her beer. "Damn it, this damn cat never belonged to anyone. Tom came and went as he pleased." She took another sip from the can. "Dean told you we used to run into each other when that other guy was president. I don't think you were around then." "Yeah, Dean mentioned that you two used to date." Marge slapped her thigh. "Have you met?" "Damn, we had sex like rabbits for over a year. Somehow, I didn't even want to leave him." I tried not to show my surprise. "Have you broken up with Dean?" "Why?" Marge shrugged again before taking another sip. "He wasn't my type." "Sure, he was a really nice guy, quite handsome, a little skinny for my tastes, but funny, great in bed, and all that. Dean is just not someone I would agree to." I tried to remain calm, but inside, I was boiling as I thought, not your type. I pulled myself together before asking in a non-confrontational tone, "Is it true, then, true? Did Dean do something to make you break up with him?" Marge shrugged again before answering, "No, nothing like that. I'm sure he's good for someone like you, but Dean just wasn't the type of man I was looking for." I laughed nervously because inside, I wanted to explode. "Wow, Marge, you must be looking for Superman." Grinning over her beer, Marge chuckled, "Well, it's good to have a man of steel around, if you know what I mean." She crushed the beer can before placing it in the trash can next to her chair. "And as much as I'd like for us two chickens to continue to reminisce about the old guys we kicked to the curb, I have to mind my own business now, Barb. Do you have a few questions for me as a homeowner?" I swallowed bile and wondered if Marge could see the steam rising from my ears as I pulled the folder out of my purse. Meeting Marge actually made my bad mood worse. Dean racked his brain, finally realizing that I didn't want to talk. He gave me space, immersing himself in his workshop and his volunteer work as a youth soccer league coach. Dean was on a 2-day trip tonight, so I was at Jim's, sitting at the bar with Shelley while she polished glasses. There were a few people in the bar, which was normal for a weeknight, although the table filled with suits made a lot of noise. "Where's your acrobat?" Shelley asked, pouring me a glass of white wine. I took a sip before answering. Dean took his stupid truck to pick up some stupid wooden piece of crap that some stupid guy with more money than brains wants to restore to its original condition. If these people have so much money, why not buy new things? What's the fun in paying 10 times more and having some old piece of crap when you can have good new things? Shelley shook her head. "Are you talking about Dean Alamar or Dean's latest mission?" "Both, neither." "I don't know, this is all so depressing." Shelley threw the towel over her shoulder. Would you like some cheese to go with this whining? She rolled her eyes. Life isn't about where you think you're going, it's about the experiences you have along the way. Dean is an amazingly nice guy, so stop whining. I looked at my glass. Shelley, I have problems. Shelley reached across the counter and gave me a fake peck on the cheek. Stop whining. You know the problems of the new world. For example, you can't find your TV remote control, your Starbucks coffee is too cold. Or an email attachment takes too long to load, the kind of shitty problems that poor people around the world would love to have, as opposed to, say, finding clean water or medicine for their sick child in a hospital 200 miles away that they can't pay for anyway. I pulled back. Just because my problems aren't as serious as others, it doesn't mean I don't have any problems. Yes, that's true, Shelley replied, with a hint of anger in her voice. You are a member of the Happy Sperm Club. To be where you are, good job, great health, loving husband, do I need to continue? I would set everything I own on fire in a heartbeat to spend 20 minutes with my late husband. You were born on third base, stop thinking you're unhappy. I was stunned by Shelley's tirade, but she was on a roll. Look, Barb, you can't be the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the baby at every baptism. Now I felt insulted and was about to protest when the front doors of the bar opened, and a stream of sweaty guys in baseball uniforms poured into the bar. Shelley's mood immediately lifted. It's going to be a good night. It's a gay men's softball league. I made a face. You let guys like that come in here? She looked at me seriously. Barb, if by these nice guys you mean men with disposable income who buy a lot of booze and spend a lot of money but never cause any problems, then yes, I not only allow these tough guys, I seek out and encourage these tough guys. This is a bar, as you understand. I was about to answer when a huge black man approached the counter. This guy was the biggest person I've ever seen. He must have been taller than 6 feet 10 inches and weighed about 250 pounds. The buttons on his barrel chest strained against his uniform, which bore the name of his team, Master Batters. Shelley must have known this black giant because she didn't object when he reached across the counter and lifted her with little more effort than a child lifting a Barbie doll. Put me down, Leroy. Shelley squealed as the Colossus gently lowered her to the ground. No problem, Shelley, Leroy replied in a deep baritone. Just thought you might want to meet the MVP of the Northeast League, Southern Division, Western Champions. Shelley batted her eyelashes shyly. Does your husband know that you're flirting with the other team? Leroy laughed out loud. I wasn't always gay, I just got sucked into it. It must have been an old joke because Shelley just rolled her eyes. Sorry, Leroy, you know I don't sleep with any man who's less than 9 inches tall. Leroy seemed to think about it for a moment. Damn it, Shelley, I won't cut off 3 inches. I was shocked by this exchange, but Shelley seemed unfazed. Even when Leroy said, that's enough, baby, give me 6 jugs of your best draft ale and keep bringing them to my fellow Batman warriors. He made a pause. And also Pepsi. Shelley began arranging the jugs on the counter. Who is a teetotaler, and why is he in my bar? Leroy looked at her confused. I am. I have to start a 3-day shift at the fire station tonight. Shelley turned to me and began filling jug bugs with beer. Barb, my only girlfriend is sick, and I'm missing a waitress tonight. She pointed to a group of guys in suits at a corner table. Can you take care of them? In the past, I have helped her when needed. Shelley and I used to be waitresses, which helped us get some cash while we were in school, so it was no big deal. Of course, I said. A noisy company gathered at the table with costumes. All the guys had their ties loosened, and some of their jackets were draped over the backs of their chairs. A man with the appearance of a former athlete seemed to be leading the party. Hi, guys, I said, putting a smile on my face. What can I offer you? I endured the typical your phone number, your breasts comments that every waitress dealing with drunken men has had to endure since taverns began serving booze. For a long time now, as a waitress, I had been immune to such remarks from frat boys and had mentally filtered them out to the point where I didn't even hear the rude comments. One suit stood up. It must have been my big man day because this guy was well over 6 feet. He pointed to the table. Sorry, my friends, we're celebrating my big promotion. He handed me a business card, so knew it shone. Beneath the name in gold font was a bold headline, Senior Vice President, Interdepartmental Technology, Southern Hemisphere. Wow, I said, trying to return the card to him. This is impressive. He waved the card away. Keep it for yourself. I'm a treat, so let's have one more drink, but only if you also have a drink with us. I tried to refuse, but the group at the table started chanting, drink. Have a drink, which escalated to the point where I agreed to have a drink with them just to shut them up. Shelley was busy filling jugs with beer while I prepared the drinks ordered at my table. She noticed the business card I placed on the bar. Whose is this? Shelley asked, pointing with her chin at the shiny new business card. I pointed to the corner table. The nice, big guy at that table, I think he's the new leader. It looks like he also has money. Shelley wiped the foam from the edge of the card. Barb, you know what Grandma said about how money can't buy happiness. I rolled my eyes. They say money can't buy happiness, but I would love to cry in my new Ferrari. Shelley took the business card and started laughing as she read it. What's so funny? I asked. Shelley shook her head as she read the card out loud, Vice President of Interdepartmental Technology for the Southern Hemisphere. Don't you understand? Look at the first letters, sure T-head. Your CEO is an. I snatched the card from her and looked at it again. After a moment, I said, so what if it's not the most elegant name? He still looks like a leader and a big shot. Shelley was not impressed. Big shots are just little shots to other big shots. Mind your manners. I laughed it off, but Shelley put her hand on my shoulder. Don't act like a nosy fool. And don't do something stupid to an. Shaking off Shelley's grip, I replied, I won't. It's just a little payback to Dean for Marge. I'm just going to have a couple of drinks with them to keep them under control. Free booze is free booze, you know that all the best things in life are free. Shelley didn't want to give up. Barb, the best things in life are free, but they are very, very expensive. In my defense, I was so drunk that I can't remember much of what happened next. I don't remember how I left the bar, how I got to my house, and walked up the stairs to my bedroom. I have some hazy recollections of engaging in intimate activities with the person in my bed, culminating in a lackluster climax. I believe I regained sobriety momentarily during the second or third encounter when he attempted penetration in an inappropriate manner. The resulting discomfort extinguished any remaining pleasure from the previous night's drinking. Stop, I exclaimed, avoiding his advances and nearly tumbling off the bed. In the dim light, he reached out to me. You're not going to leave me unsatisfied, are you? I still have one more opportunity. As my head began to throb with the onset of an inevitable hangover, feelings of remorse crept in. Placing my hand on his chest, I expressed my desire for him to depart. I believe it's time for you to leave. I cannot allow you to stay overnight. Would you like to make me breakfast? I really don't need it now, as my headache is getting worse. Very funny, but seriously, I need you to get away. I pointed to the bathroom door as I got out of bed, heading towards the bathroom door. I glanced at the clock on the dresser, the red LEDs of which showed 3:18 a.m. The water in the bathroom turned off, then the strip of light under the door disappeared. Meanwhile, a creeping hangover competed with guilt as reality began to set in. Just as the bathroom door swung open, and I could see the naked silhouette of the bedroom door open at the same time. And I saw the outline of a figure holding something in his hands, sneaking past the threshold. I screamed, and the intruder froze. Jumped out of the bathroom doorway, grabbed a table lamp from the dresser, and hit the back of the intruder's head with the lamp. The uninvited guest collapsed on the floor. I stopped screaming and turned on the bedside lamp. After fiddling with my desk phone, I dialed 911. Send the police. There's a burglar in my house. I screamed desperately. As the 911 operator began her chatter, I looked at who was tying the hands of the intruder behind his back with a lamp cord. And suddenly, my blood ran cold. Roses that had fallen from the hands of the uninvited guest were scattered on the floor. Next to his hands lay a pair of work boots that the guy must have been carrying when he was hit. The boots were Dean's well-worn work boots. though was finishing tying a knot on his bound hands, muttering, "You burglar. You think you can sneak up on me?" I dropped the phone when grabbed the intruder by the hair and tore his head off the floor. Now, my blood froze as Dean's bloody face stared back at me. A quiet groan escaped his lips. I jumped off the bed and walked up to my prone husband. "Get away from him! It's my husband!" Dean's face hit the floor with a thud. "Your husband? What the?" He never finished his sentence because a low growl came from the darkness outside the bedroom door. Two yellow eyes glared at us for a second before a black blur flew out of the darkness and attached itself to S' face. Screams mixed with a loud growl as Tom the cat sank his claws and teeth into his head. The two turned around as jumped to his feet, trying to pull Tom the cat away, crashing into the window. Finally tore the big black cat away from his scratched, bleeding face. Tom the cat dodged a furious kick and quickly hid under the bed. Though was holding his face and cursing as I dropped to my knees, moving to cup Dean's head in my hands. Suddenly, pain more severe than I had ever experienced before shot through my left buttock. It felt like a dozen knives had been stabbed into me. Letting out a scream, I jumped up and tried to brush away the source of my pain. Tom the cat grabbed onto my buttocks and wouldn't let go as I spun around like some kind of whirling dervish, screaming in pain the entire time. After what seemed like an eternity, I came across Dean, who was still holding his bleeding face and cursing the cat. Tom the cat finally separated from me, retreating back under the bed. Again, trying to ignore the blood running down my leg, I jumped around, trying to get back to Dean, but somehow I stepped on the intruder's foot. "You stupid," roared, removing his hand from his face to deliver a strong left blow to my head. The force of his blow threw me onto the bed. "I'm going to kick your ass," he thundered. My ears were still ringing when his hand raised. Took a step from the window towards me as I lay dazed on the bed. But before he could take another step, I saw Dean jump to his feet, his hands still tied behind his back. Dean jumped forward, then threw himself into some kind of hard, gravity-defying, armless somersault. At the peak of his midair turn, Dean seemed to spin around, both of his legs struck in the chest and slammed hard back into the wall, where he became entangled in the window curtains. As Dean slammed his shoulder into S' stomach, sending him back into the wall, Dean turned his head to yell at me, "Run, Barb, run. Get out of here. Call for help. I will detain this rapist." I froze in place, staring at Dean's bloody face, his hair matted with blood, trying to hold me in place with his much smaller body. The curtains were ripped off the wall as raised his massive forearm and slammed it into Dean's face. There was a sickening crack as Dean fell to the ground. Kicked Dean, who groaned as he rolled away from the blow. Took a step forward and raised his foot high to step on Dean, who lay motionless on the floor. As soon as S' leg began its downward journey, a black spot burst out from under the bed, and the cat Tom, with a piercing growl, grabbed the S' reproductive organs. S' scream was so high-pitched that it sounded like a woman's. The screaming continued as leaned over and pounded Tom the cat, trying to drive the angry cat away from his nether regions. Suddenly, Dean shook his head and jumped up from the floor, slamming his shoulder into the stomach of the bent. Dean let out a roar as was lifted from the floor onto Dean's back in a fireman's carrier, legs swinging. Dean pulled the three of them into the large picture window of the bedroom at full speed. Dean's roar, S' screams, and Tom's cat hissing were drowned out by the noise of breaking glass. I sat rooted to the spot on the bed, watching in horror as suddenly all three disappeared from sight. They simply disappeared outside the window into the inky dark night. Suddenly, all their sounds became muffled, and then nothing. There was silence for a moment, broken by the single sound of a curtain flapping in the wind from the broken window. Then several sounds as small pieces of broken glass fell from the window pane. Suddenly, there was a terrible, ear-splitting, heartbreaking scream that filled the room. It took my brain a few minutes to realize that I was screaming at the top of my lungs. Everything in my mind was like a fog, but gradually, the fog dissipated as if I was emerging to the surface of the lake after being underwater. Opening my eyes, I saw an Asian woman in a blue hospital gown wiping my face with a cool towel. Staring back, the Asian woman put down the towel and hurried away, muttering, "I'm going to see the doctor." Turning my head, I saw Shelley sitting on a chair next to my bed. However, when I tried to sit up, I found that my wrists and legs were strapped to the bed. Damn it! I shouted to Shelley, "Take that Chinese nurse back and untie me." Shelley came up to me. "Calm down, Barb. You were out all day. They had to restrain you because you were belligerent. This nurse, who I think is Vietnamese, went to get the doctor." I was still struggling. Chinese, Vietnamese, who cares? Free me now. I need to see Dean. Calm down, Barb. You're lucky I'm even here. Leroy, a black guy from a gay softball league, was one of the first to arrive on the scene the night of your event. Leroy remembered that you were my friend. He let me know that you were here and what happened. Shelley said the last part with misty eyes. My body deflated like a balloon in the memory of that night. Shame washed over me because Shelley knew what had happened. She continued, "They had to give you a sedative. The whole scene wasn't pleasant. Don't worry, Leroy got some of his firefighter buddies to use ladders to fix the broken window on the top floor of your house. Well, even though I was released, I had to sign a bunch of papers saying that I went against the doctor's recommendations. I will make an appointment in the future, forms to release the hospital, blah, blah, blah. I would have signed a confession to the Kennedy shooting if it would have allowed me to see Dean. However, when I saw Dean through the NICU window, it was terrifying. He was wrapped in bandages with tubes, bags, and machines around or in him. I was speechless as I tried to understand the list of anatomical terms the doctor used to describe Dean's condition. I interrupted the doctor's medical monologue. "Will Dean be okay?" The doctor hesitated, and I tightly squeezed Shelley's hand, who was next to me. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sure he'll survive, but I'm afraid it will be a long and difficult road. Several rounds of reconstructive surgery and quite a long recovery period will be required. Unfortunately, some of the best treatments are not covered by insurance. The process required to give this patient the best chance of a full recovery will be very, very expensive." I realized that I had always been madly in love with Dean. It just took a tragic event for that love to surface. I was determined to show him that love now. I emptied my retirement account to fund a rebuild. Early withdrawal fees and tax penalties didn't bother me. When big names were needed, I took out a huge loan on my house, increased my credit card limits, and even traded in my Lexus for cash and a beat-up used van. I thought a van would make it easier to transport Dean when he finished his treatment. I can't believe how much I miss Dean. I think it's true that you only miss the sun when it starts to snow and the light when the candle burns out. As the weeks wore on, I just wanted to die because I was already living in hell. Dean's mental recovery was slower than his physical recovery. The neurosurgeon told me his memory would return in parts, but they couldn't predict when or how much. I was afraid of the thought that he would remember that night. I spent hours with him, looking through old photos of us, telling him stories, and spending countless hours searching for Tom the cat, who disappeared that night. Flyers, advertisements, even visits to animal shelters failed to locate that black cat. Several months passed, but the day I saw two men with law enforcement signs leaving the rehab center, my blood froze. Up to this point, I had managed to keep persistent detectives away from Dean with a flank of doctor's orders and legal papers. Things went to hell when I was stopped at the front desk of Dean's rehab center. The two burly guards who had always been kind to me now had a different look as they blocked my path to Dean's room. "Ma'am, we will have to ask you to leave the area immediately," one of the guards told me in a serious tone. "We're also going to request that you not return until further notice," another added. "Your presence is upsetting one of our patients." I opened my mouth to speak, but each of them began to push me out of the building, into the parking lot, and towards my car. The next day, a police car delivered a restraining order that forbade me from having any contact with Dean in any way and required me to stay more than 100 yards away from him. At first, I didn't recognize Dean. I thought I was in the wrong place or came on the wrong day. My heart skipped a beat when I looked at the clock. Perhaps I had arrived at the wrong time and was late. It had been over a year since I had seen Dean. And my life was steadily going downhill in every aspect, financially, professionally, socially, emotionally, and physically. Until now, he had rejected all my attempts at any kind of communication, so I was determined to make this meeting inevitable. I was led through the unfamiliar stately estate to the back. I walked past some furniture that I determined Dean had restored, but when I walked onto the porch, the man sitting in front of me looked like a stranger. Dean was completely bald, with a nasty scar around a quarter of the top of his head. His once sparkling blue eyes, which lit up whenever he saw me, were now hard stones that barely glimmered with recognition. The combination of a dark mustache and goatee made Dean look more like Walter White from Breaking Bad than my husband. The only way I knew it was Dean was because of the big black cat sitting on his lap that Dean was petting. For a moment, the image of this bald man petting a cat looked like something out of a bad sci-fi movie with an evil villain about to blow up the world. I took a shallow breath before taking a large step towards the two of them, arms spread wide. I hoped the hug would start our new beginning on a good note. Tom the cat jumped up in Dean's lap, his feline back arched high, his fur standing on end, his tail raised with a hissing growl that spit through his bared fangs. Dean extended his hand, palm facing me. "Stop it, Barb. There's only one person here that I'm interested in touching, and it's not you." I froze. The words coming from the man in Dean's body did not have that silky smooth tone that every karaoke patron envied. The voice was coarse, a guttural sound more suited to Marlon Brando in his role in The Godfather. Having come to my senses, I sat down on the chair opposite Dean. Between us, there was a small, low table on which lay several scattered folders. Pointing to Tom the cat, who was still growling quietly, not taking his eyes off me, I said, "Wow, Dean, where did you find Tom?" I looked for him everywhere. "I haven't seen Tom since, Dean kept his stern gaze on me and sat silently in a way that was more than uncomfortable for me. Finally, he spoke. "Well, Barb, Margie brought Tom to me. She discovered that he was injured and rushed Tom to the veterinary clinic. Looks like Tom spent some expensive time in the hospital too," I muttered under my breath. Then, putting a smile on my face, I said louder, "That was wonderful of Marge. We'll have to find some way to pay her back." Dean petted Tom some more. "Yes, Barb, you want to talk, don't you?" I tried to fight the tears welling in my eyes. "Dean, I know I made some bad decisions," I began, but Dean interrupted me. "Bad decisions? Bad decisions make good stories but shitty marriages." I tried to ignore his attack. I just started to see something more in myself. I thought I was better than I really was. I thought I was special, never without actually saying it to myself. Did I think that I was smarter and more deserving than any of the people around me? Now I know better. I waited for Dean's reaction. The seconds seemed to tick by like a clock before he spoke. "Beware of false knowledge, it is more dangerous than ignorance." "Why are you here?" "I'm here, Dean, to say I'm really sorry, to show you that I know how you feel." I let out another guttural laugh. "Do you know how I feel? I would always walk with a limp, plus I would have constant headaches, and my balance would never be the same. I tell you what, Barb, go get someone twice your size to smash your head in with a lamp, break most of your body, and then fall 30 foot out of a window. Maybe then we'll talk. Oh wait, also make sure you were stabbed in the back and betrayed by someone you cared about and trusted more than your life." I think finally realizing that you never loved me was worse than going to rehab. "Dean, this is not true," I protested. Dean grinned. "The truth will set you free, but not before it ends you." I didn't know what to answer. "I don't know what to say, Dean." Dean leaned back as Tom the cat jumped off his lap. "Come on, Barb, telling the truth is easy, maintaining a web of lies is hard. Or are you going to apply Homer Simpson's logic to me, with as it takes two to lie, one to lie and the other to listen?" Now I started to get angry. "I'm not some idiot, and I see the light at the end of the tunnel." He grinned. "We all know that light travels faster than sound. This is why some people seem smart until you hear what they say. I think you rightfully fit into this category." I tried to calm down. "Did you really feel the need to go after Shelley? After your complaints to the state council, they revoked Shelley's liquor license. She lost the bar." Dean intertwined his fingers. "Yes, it seems that the Alcohol Commission takes its regulations seriously and does not allow the owners of establishments that sell alcohol to assign non-employees to serve alcoholic beverages. Shelley sent you to this table where they got you drunk." I see no reason why Shelley shouldn't reap what she sows. It wasn't her fault, Dean. The bar was packed that night. Shelley was too busy to follow my stupidity. He glared at me. Shelley wasn't the only one who was busy that night, was she, Barb? I was almost in tears. Shelley was my oldest, best friend. Now she doesn't even talk to me, and she was also your friend. I wiped my eyes. The injury did something to you, and it's all my fault. You were always such a good guy, Dean. Why did you feel you had to burn Shelley? Dean leaned forward. Burn Shelley? I guess I'm just ashes right now because you know what they say about where the nice guys finish? The good guys finish last. Never again mistake niceness for weakness. He leaned back. So, Barb, if you can't fly with the cool girls, get off your broom. It was like a nightmare. You couldn't just take it out on me, could you, Dean? Hasn't there been enough pain and suffering? The district attorney did not press any charges. Their investigation simply chalked it up to one big group riot. He pointed to a folder on the table with the state seal on it. Lies written in ink cannot hide facts written in blood. Blood. Is this what you need, Dean? My blood? You know, we lost asshole's civil suit when your testimony supported his case, Dean said, looking at me. I think that asshole, who will never walk again and in a bag for the rest of his life, deserves something better than memories of sex with you. This should be happy he's still alive, Barb, Dean said, looking at me. Many people are alive only because it is illegal to shoot them. I ignored this remark. I will lose my house. They have already started taking my salary. All our bank accounts are frozen. We have no money, I said. Dean seemed surprised. Yes, you don't have money. It was a statement, not a question. He gestured around the area. I am just a poor planner, trading my labor for meter room and board. Everything was not going at all the way I wanted this meeting to go. I took a deep breath. I can apologize a million times, but now I see that you are not ready to hear it. Just please, let's keep the lines of communication open. We will cross bridges as we approach them. Dean pulled a document from the stack on the table and tossed it to me. These are divorce papers. Sometimes you have to burn a few bridges to keep the crazy people from following you. My life continued to spin in circles for the next 16 months. I lost my job due to performance issues. It seemed like all my time was taken up with my new hobby of drinking, leaving little time for work. Going to work seemed pointless due to the fact that most of my paycheck was being taken, and I spent endless hours trying to keep creditors at bay until my payday. There were bright spots, like the insurance coverage from my job lasting long enough to complete treatment for an STD I caught during one of my drunken blackouts. Today was the lowest point. I waited outside what had once been my home for the bank representative to come and complete the foreclosure process. I was promised a $100 in cash if I kept my old house in good condition to pass on to the next owner. That $100, along with everything I didn't sell or pawn in my beat-up minivan, should last me a long time. Along with my 4 nearly bald tires to get me to my new job, an elderly aunt ran a combination inn and tavern far to the north, near the mining towns. I was going to be with the hillbillies in the village. Not a dream job, but it provided a place to live at a price I could afford. Naturally, in my time of despair, who do I see coming towards me? The woman who started this whole chain of events, that Marge. A fat cow was walking her dog, who was biting her ankle, a cigarette dangling from her lips. I silently prayed that Marge would cross the street, but that wasn't meant to be. When she walked right up to me, "Are you going on bail?" asked, blowing a stream of smoke past me. Yes, Marge. I'm going to help an old aunt in the north. You know the old saying, when one door closes, another opens, Barb. When that door closes, you better take a hammer and some nails, hammer it in, and keep that door closed. I'm sorry, I said as I watched Marge's little dog lift her leg to pee on the front tire of my minivan. Marge took another drag from her cigarette. You look like some mentally deficient Rapunzel from that fairy tale, except that you are spinning gold into straw. You're the only person who managed to turn Dean, one of the sweetest men to ever walk between his legs, into a complete douchebag. Maybe he's just a jerk to you, Marge, I objected. What do you care about? You threw it away. What does this have to do with you? Marge lit another cigarette from the one she was smoking. You must be the dumbest woman on this earth. I let Dean go because he was too good a guy to leave me himself. I knew he deserved better than me. We only met after drunken sex. I'm not as stupid as you. I knew Dean was just staying with me so I wouldn't look like some complete idiot. I was in no mood to argue with Marge. Look, if I could go back in time and change everything, I would. Marge leaned in to pet her dog. No, you would get injured from time travel, for example, from stupidity. I pointed to the screaming cross hanging around Marge's neck. I thought you were a Christian. What happened to love for one's neighbor? Jesus may love you, but you're still a bitch, she snapped back. I waved to Marge as she and the dog turned to leave. Well, thank God this is the last time I see you. Marge never looked back, but I heard her comment, never think that you have seen the last of something or someone. I had a headache and was dying for a drink when a BMW finally pulled up, and a well-dressed lady in her 30s jumped out. On her forehead was written, I am in real estate because my husband makes a lot of money and I am bored while the nanny takes care of the children. Look at me, you must be Barb. Sorry I'm late, everything was just crazy. This is my third citation today, and I have 2 more to go through. Her cheerful tone just got on my nerves. Oh God, how hard it is for you. I bet you missed the days when robbing a bank meant people robbed banks instead of banks stealing people's houses. The bank representative looked confused as she pulled out a piece of paper and an envelope from her designer bag. I have your money right here, just like we agreed. This should bring a smile to your face. Oh yes, trading my great-grandparents' home, which has been in my family for generations, in exchange for less than a month's salary makes me want to dance a jig and burst into song. She tried to calm me down. Don't worry, the house will be in good hands. A bunch of rich old men set up a trust and bought it. They agreed to keep it in its original condition. Once their caretaker arrives, we can give you a tour to confirm everything, and then you'll be checked out and on your way. Just then, a loud crash announced the arrival of a large motorcycle, which stopped behind the BMW. The rider was your stereotypical biker, covered in tattoos, wearing a leather vest, gloves, and sunglasses. Instead of a helmet, he wore a Harley-Davidson scarf on his head. When he dismounted, it was clear that the guy was short but extremely muscular, built like a strong fire hydrant. My heart sank as the biker turned to the box on the back of the bike. The big black cat climbed out of the box and stretched out on the sidewalk. The presence of Tom the cat confirmed that the biker was Dean. He walked towards us with a noticeable limp, stopped, and lifted his sunglasses, a cigar clutched between his lips. Dean walked up to the girl, completely ignoring me. Let me finish this. She waved her hand in an exaggerated gesture, clearing away Dean's cigar smoke. I would appreciate it if you didn't smoke in my presence. Dean paused to remove the cigar from his mouth but made no move to extinguish the ember as he addressed her. Listen carefully, you cow. I'm not here for your gratitude, she looked puzzled. I don't think she was used to being talked to like that at her country club. She tried to change tactics, pointing at Dean's cigar. Do you know how harmful this is to health? Dean looked at his cigar. My grandfather lived to be 95 years old smoking cigars? She asked with a mocking expression on her face. No, Dean replied, putting the cigar back in his mouth. He lived to be 95 minding his own damn business. The girl clutched her designer handbag tightly to her chest as Dean took a step closer to her before speaking. He pointed to the house. You're here to get your commission, Dean pointed at me. I'm sure there's a fleet coming into port somewhere, and this cheating wench needs to service a bunch of sailors, and you can join her for all I care. But first, before you send her on her way, take the keys from that stupid woman. Finally, I spoke. Dean, I ask you not to insult me. Dean's stern gaze turned to me. Oh, did I make you feel bad by calling you a stupid woman? Sorry, I thought this wasn't news to you. The girl must have suddenly realized that we knew each other and tried to lighten the situation with a forced laugh. Well, you know, everything happens for a reason. Dean kept his eyes on me as he spoke. Barb, your reason is because you're stupid and do stupid things. But look at it this way, jellyfish don't have brains, and they've lived for 150 million years, so there's hope. I wanted to crawl into some hole. Let's get this over with so I can get my money and get out of here, then you can be happy. Dean waved his cigar at me. Yes, seeing you fills me with joy, so much that I'd rather sit on my hands so as not to clap my hands for joy. He turned to the bank representative. Give that woman the envelope before she starts stopping cars on the highway and pulling tricks. I'm sure the only room in the house that she damaged was the bedroom from overuse. His interlocutor looked unnerved, but Dean snatched the envelope from her hands and thrust it into my palm. I saw that it was full of $100 bills. I know you're not familiar with getting paid when you're not in a horizontal position, but don't worry, you'll be on your back in no time. Dean grinned. I wanted so badly to throw money in his face, but practicality overpowered my pride. I turned on my heel, walked to my beat-up car, and drove away, wiping away the tears that blurred the image of Dean in the cracked rearview mirror. Standing with Tom the cat in his arms in front of what was once my home. And I remembered another old saying, Shell's grandmother's, if you ever want to feel rich, you should just count all the things you have that money can't buy. What do you think of our story today? I find it quite interesting and multifaceted. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. See you in the next